In June of '66, Paul visited John at his Kenwood home to work on some songs. With John still only sleeping, Paul requested a cup of tea from the maid and took his guitar outside to sit by the swimming pool. Reflecting on that day, he recalled, "I sat out by the pool on one of those sun chairs with my guitar and started strumming in E. By the time John had woken up, Paul had already composed most of a song, which they then brought indoors to finish." While John might have contributed a few final words, Paul noted, "But it's very me. It's one of my favorite songs that I've written, so I would credit that pretty much 80-20 on that one." John later acknowledged that the song was predominantly Paul's work. "Here, There, and Everywhere was Paul's song completely," he said, and even called it one of my favorite songs of the Beatles. Interestingly, Paul's book of the lyrics suggests that John might have had a hand in crafting the opening lyrics. In coming up with lyrics to Here, There, and Everywhere, we were trying to emulate the openings of some of our favorite old songs that had a completely rambling preamble. Think of Anything Goes. There's a preliminary section to that Cole Porter song that seems to have absolutely nothing to do with it. Times have changed and we've often rewound the clock, since the Puritans got the shock when they landed on Plymouth Rock. That's what lies behind the lines, "To lead a better life, I need my love to be here." Since Paul here uses the word we when describing this preamble, it could be construed as meaning John helped him write this section.
It always reminds me in structure of a great Cole Porter song, Cheek to Cheek, which Fred Astaire sang. And it starts off heaven, I'm in heaven, it goes through it. And then in the middle, it goes a lot to God, dancing, but it takes me back to heaven. And it's so neat the way it just wraps itself up that I always thought, wow, that's a great trick, you know. So Here, There, and Everywhere does that. Here, first verse. Second verse. There, third verse. Everywhere. And leading me back to here, you know. That was what attracted me. And then I think that wouldn't have been enough to make it my favorite song, but I think it's got a nice melody.
Their assistant road manager, Mal Evans, also made his contribution to the song. Mal remembers, "Paul came in with a smile from ear to ear. He sits down, plays it for us, and sings it. And the line I came up with was, 'Watching her eyes, hoping I'm always there.' I'm very eye-conscious." McCartney revealed in a 1974 Rolling Stone interview that the song was supposed to be a Beach Boys song, but you wouldn't have known. The song's inspiration appears to be the result of a promotion of the Beach Boys' album Pet Sounds that John and Paul, and Keith Moon, among other musicians and various journalists, were treated to by the band member Bruce Johnson at the Waldorf Hotel in London on May 17, 1966, the day after its US release.
I took an American version of Pet Sounds in May of '66 to England, and then Keith Moon and I hit it off, and I had a couple of people meeting me, and Keith had brought Lennon and McCartney over to the hotel. And we were able to sit down, now check this out, and I put it on my record player. So I was able to play the mono, which sounded great, and then we played it through, and then we played it again. And Lennon and McCartney, they were awesome. They were so polite and cool and loved the music. It was a great experience. Usually it's don't shoot the messenger. Well, this time the messenger, you know, I almost got knighted, you know, because I brought this great work. I had nothing to do with it, you know. It's like someone rolls up the new Rolls-Royce Ghost, and someone has a camera, and I go, you know, take a bow for the car coming up. Apparently, the vibe of Wouldn't It Be Nice crept into Here, There, and Everywhere on the Revolver album.
It's widely believed that Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band was inspired by Pet Sounds, but Paul clarified, "It's hard to beat the fact that Here, There, and Everywhere was influenced most immediately by the Beach Boys' God Only Knows from Pet Sounds. What's really interesting is that God Only Knows was itself inspired by Brian Wilson's repeated listening to our songs on Rubber Soul. God Only Knows, as heard at this listening party, was quickly assimilated by Paul and incorporated into Here, There, and Everywhere for the current album that they were wrapping up at the time. With Brian's track still ringing in Paul's ears a couple of weeks or so later, he took to emulating these innovated chord structures and melody lines while relaxing at John's pool. The recording took 3 days total, with particular attention given to the texture and its 3-part backing vocals, which, arranged by George Martin, follow a block harmony sequence. Although the third session was brief, lasting about an hour to overdub a vocal harmony, the entire recording process spanned 16.5 hours. George Harrison also added a chromatic melody heard during the bridge on acoustic 12-string guitar in spaces that didn't include the harmonies. We planned the track layout very carefully, Geoff Emerick says, so that there was a completely separate track that we could dedicate to bass, allowing Paul to focus on each and every note when he recorded the overdub. Significant time was spent perfecting the Beach Boys-inspired harmonies, with George Martin arranging and guiding the process. Emerick noted, George's real expertise was in vocal harmony work, and there's no doubt about that. That is his forte, grooming and working out these great harmonies. However, George Martin modestly described the harmonies as simple, saying, "There's nothing very clever, no counterpoint, just moving block harmonies, but very effective." During the rhythm track recordings, John only participated in backing vocals and finger snaps, leaving the instrumental work to the other three. Paul then recorded his stunning lead vocals. He remembers this vocal session. "When I sang it in the studio, I remember thinking, I'll sing it like Marianne Faithfull, something no one would ever know. You get these little things in your mind. You think, I'll sing it like James Brown might. But of course it's always you that sings it. But in your head there's this little James Brown for the session. If you can't think how to sing the thing, that's always a good clue. Imagine Aretha Franklin to come and sing it. Ray Charles is gonna sing it." So that one was a little voice. I used an almost falsetto voice and double-tracked it. My Marianne Faithfull impression. Paul's vocals were then slowed down on the tape to sound sped up on the playback. Interestingly, Mal Evans described Here, There, and Everywhere in his diary as a lovely song, adding, he, Paul, thinks it's too fruity. I don't. The mandolin-like guitar tone was created using a Leslie speaker, and in the final bars, it was given a horn-like sound with the help of a volume pedal. The song is cleverly arranged, beginning with a 3-bar intro that subtly introduces its G, B-flat major key. George Martin later expressed that Here, There, and Everywhere was his favorite Paul McCartney song, adding, "It is probably his as well, so writing a special arrangement for one of my favorite voices was a daunting proposition." Martin did a string and woodwind score for the song for a 1993 radio concert, as well as an arrangement for Celine Dion for his album In My Life in 1997, which leads us to speculate that if there hadn't been a crunch in time to complete Revolver, would George Martin have proposed a beautiful orchestral arrangement for Here, There, and Everywhere, had he the time to do so? God only knows. Over the years, Paul expressed how strongly he felt about Here, There, and Everywhere. In many interviews, people say, "Which is your favorite tune?" And I'm often tempted to say, Yesterday, because it arrives so magically. But I like this one. In fact, if pushed, I would have to say that Here, There, and Everywhere is my own favorite of all my songs. So now, when I sing it, I look back at it and I think, the boy's not bad.
And I was rooming with John in the hotel we were staying at. And it was a cassette, I think, in those days, of the album.
Yeah.
And we played Here, There, and Everywhere. And he said, whoa,
that's good.
That's a really great song, you know. He
Were you
didn't say your
flabbergasted?
songs. Yeah, because he never complimented me like that. Because we're guys.
Yeah, I guess.
We're Liverpool guys, you know. You don't want to be seen to be groveling. And
yeah, but it does liberate you in a sense when your writing partner kind of goes, you know, hey, that's really good.
It was really nice. I remember it to this day, you know, exactly where I was when he said it. It was great. Yeah, it really gave me a lot of confidence in that song and in my writing.
Yes.
But you didn't generally do that kind of thing. You know, you never sat around and sort of said, I love you, man.
Right,
you know,
no. Would have been weird.